Hello and welcome to animation. Today we are going to learn about getting started using Toon Boom Harmony Premium. The things we're looking at, whether we're using Premium or Essentials, it's going to be about the same in the beginning here. We're not getting into any of the more advanced features, but the user interface has a few tweaks that are a little bit different. So the first thing when working in Harmony is to create a scene. So a scene is exactly that. It is typically when we're building the animation, it's what's happening in a single location. It allows us to keep our projects more manageable, so there are fewer frames long, fewer layers involved, and that just works better. And then when it's done, you export out all of your scenes as frames or video files and combine them together in your choice video editor. So the first thing is I'm going to type in a new name for this, and we see we have the create scene button right here that will create it, but first we probably should browse where we're going to put it. So I'm going to click on animation and I will now choose open because I know that's the folder I want to put it in. I can change the size. Currently we're doing it at 1080p, 24 frames per second. We'll explain that more momentarily. If I have existing projects, I click on Open Browse for the project file and choose Open. Now once I click on Create Scene, it thinks for a moment, creates the scene, and it opens it up. The user interface in Harmony is similar to a lot of timeline-based programs. We have our tools on the left-hand side of the screen. We have our windows on the right-hand side of the screen that give us access to our different properties, and timeline down at the bottom. And again, when we talk about this being frames, 24 frames per second, and the key thing about that is animation typically is created as frames, not as time. So we're not capturing time-based media like audio and video. We think of as time-based media, but really video is just a series of pictures or frames per second. So it's 24, 30, 60, 120, whatever number we're choosing to use. And we can see this red bar here. This is our current time indicator that is showing us, or current frame indicator showing us what frame we're currently on. So there's all kinds of buttons. It's kind of visual overload when you start. And the crazy thing about it is you can super customize your layout here. So anytime you're looking at a different window, if I click on the plus over here, I can add additional buttons to this, or I can choose to open additional windows. So we can add in different tabs here. So we can see we have drawing, we have camera, we have our library, our tool properties, our color, node view. Notice Toon Boom is a Canadian company from Quebec, so French Quebec, so they spell color with the U in it. Now we have our colors over here. We can set up specific palettes that we can assign to a scene. So there's a lot of things to look at when we are in the program. We have layers down here on the bottom left, and then we can add in new layers. There's all different kinds of layers. We'll learn about those in the coming sessions. But the first thing to begin typically is we want to say create a new color to work with. So we have the default colors that come here. If I want to create a new color, I just click on the plus. It adds in a new color swatch, double click on it, and now I can choose a color off of my window here. So I can move through my rainbow here. I can choose things. And that's one way of working. I prefer the multi versus the single wheel mode. The multi-wheel mode I find just a little bit easier. Then I can just go and choose whatever hue I'm looking for. I can choose my saturation and my value for it, so I can create that color. I can name this whatever color I want it to be. We can see it automatically updated it there, and now I can just close that out. So once I have done that, we have our different tools. The two most common that we'll create artwork with will be the pencil tool and the brush tool. So a little bit about the differences between those is the pencil tool, when I work with that, we have our different pencil options over here. We also have different pencils that we can choose off of this list. So there's a lot of, you'll see where we can have thick and thin. They have different textures to them, or we can use just a basic shaped pencil. Add some other buttons on because I've fired up Harmony before. We can see there's a lot of options that we'll be learning how those different things function. If we want to customize the size of our pencil, we can choose the size over there. If I double click in the little square swatch, it now shows me more options that I can work with. So as I'm working with this pencil, I can even choose to adjust it so that as I draw, it perhaps helps smooth out. So if I have a shaky hand, it helps to smooth that out. And we can turn that centerline smoothing up to, say, something like 20. And now if I draw, we can start to see where it's starting to clean up that line as I go. Now it's pretty small right now. If I were to scale this up and make it much fatter, we can see, so if I draw, it's helping to straighten it out. If I turn off centerline smoothing, now I get all of my shakes or movements that happen while I'm drawing. So I like to keep my centerline smoothing with my pencil tool somewhere around 15. And I am drawing with the stylus. If you're drawing with a mouse, you may want to change the setting to agree with how you move your mouse as you draw. Key thing about working with a pencil is that as I draw pencil lines after the fact, I can make the pencil line bigger or smaller on it, which makes it a little bit different. I'm just going to create another color here. I'm going to call this teal. I'm going to choose that. Now if I grab the brush tool and look at the brush, I can make my brush bigger over here and the pencil. If you hold down O on the keyboard and now click and draw, it shows you how big or small that brush is going to be. So I'm going to just make my brush bigger here as I draw, and now I can draw. Now because I'm using a stylus, it is pressure sensitive, so if I press harder it gets bigger. Now when we draw here in Harmony, a couple things about working with this is as we draw, we can see each one of those paint strokes that I made. Now I switched over to the select tool, are separate. So even though they were the same color, they're separate objects. Now if I look and click on the pencil, you'll see it puts this line through the middle of the pencil. That line shows me that is the path. So Harmony is drawing with vector lines here. And what a vector line is it is a mathematically defined path. These are vector shapes, so we can see we have these and we can modify the contours of those. So if you're familiar with a program like Illustrator, this is pretty much what we are doing here is we're drawing with vector art like Illustrator. So if I go and select this, now I can go and scale that up so I can make that fatter after the fact. So one of the advantages of using pencil lines is as I draw those lines, I can make them bigger or smaller after the fact and adjust that in my animation. When I use a brush tool, what I draw is what I get. Now if I draw with red here on top of the blue, now if I click and grab the red, we can see it does not affect it. So it's not like I'm working in a pixel-based or Photoshop style artwork, but we are drawing with vector. Now if I want to select multiple things, what's nice with the select tool is I can just kind of run my mouse across it or run my selector across it and it will select anything that I hit. If I circle all of that, it selected everything that falls within that space. But again, this is not attached to that. So we can change that when we're drawing because sometimes that can be annoying. So we can see if we go through here of auto flatten, if I choose auto flatten when I draw, if I draw a line, if I draw another line going across here, and now I select it, those lines are solid. But they're only solid within a given color because I can now, oh no, I forgot, that's right. We can see by using auto flatten, it now is effectively cutting the artwork on it. So it gives some, we can get some unpredictable results when we're painting with different colors. And if we were to switch to this option right here, draw behind, now when I'm going like this, let go, we can see how it drew behind that artwork. Switch over to my select tool, but we can see because of auto flatten, these are now all separate pieces. So if I want to move something around, it takes a little getting used to if you're not used to working with kind of an object or vector-based drawing tools. So those would be something to keep in mind as you work on building your artwork. But one of the things that I like to do while I'm working is to use the pencil tool for all of my lines. And as long as what I draw is a closed shape, so that is not a closed shape. If I click on it and select it, we can see the ends aren't touching. Here we can see the ends are, if we zoom in, are almost touching. And that's going to become important here. Here the ends are almost touching. We can see that they're almost touching at that point. So that will come in handy with that. Spacebar gives you the hand while you're in your camera view. So we can see I zoomed out using my mouse wheel. This rectangle represents my main movie. If I don't want to see what's outside the edges of it, I can click on this framing option and it will crop it to what is the outside of my movie. Now it's showing me gray here, but technically if I render my movie out, it is transparent. There's no color here, and my movie will come out with a black background or a transparent background, depending on my render settings. If I grab the paint bucket tool, which is something a lot of people are used to working with, if I click, we can see nothing is happening. And my paint bucket tool right now is set to, right now it's not closing any gaps. And I can say, hey, close a large gap there. So if I click here, now it's able to close it. And it can close it there, and it can close it there. So we can see how it was able to find that shape and close it. So I can see that I've now made a fill. If I pull this over so it's not attached. So I made a fill that went into that shape using the paint bucket tool. So sometimes when you draw, your shapes won't be closed, and you'll be like, I'm using the paint bucket tool, and you click, 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 and if you look here, that looks closed, but they're not actually closed. But if I use the paintbrush tool, that's closed, because when we look at this, we can see that there is no center line, there is no adjustable part to it. It is just a solid shape. If I grab the white arrow, you can see it puts these little handles out here that I can select on it. If I click on this path here, we can see that this path, apparently, there we go. I'm trying to find the end point. Oh, let's move the fill out of there. Move that over. So now we can see here are, that is the endpoint there. If I don't want that, I can just hit the backspace or delete key, make it go away. If I know I want them to be joined, then we can work on joining them. Under the drawing, so under cleanup, we can close gaps and choose how we want to close it. We do have options when we are drawing with the pencil tool as well, where we can look at our different options here. We can see if you draw with multiple lines, so much like with the paintbrush tool, it will join the lines so it's not just a bunch of separate pieces. And here, auto close gaps, so when you are drawing, it is going to close it out. And we can also turn on snapping as we draw. So we have a lot of options as we work with these tools. Most of them we don't have to worry about too much. The paint behind or draw behind I find to be quite useful when you're trying to create some stylistic artwork. But much of the time when we're drawing, we set our lines to a specific thickness, like 1.5 or 3 pixels, depending on the style or type of artwork that you're using, and then you just draw your lines, and then we use automated features to create our fills and fill it in. We don't even use the paint bucket tool. So there's a lot of things that we're going to learn as we go. Now, to adjust my view so I can go back and see my whole camera view, hold down the Shift key, hit the letter M, it zooms it back out so it makes it fill your screen so that we can see what's there. Again, your mouse wheel allows you to adjust it. Now I can see right here, you'll notice it's zooming on wherever my mouse is currently positioned. So my mouse is here, my mouse is here. It's not zooming based on the middle of the image. That's something that I find to be useful, so I can zoom in, work on this, zoom back out. Zoom in over here, work on this, zoom back out. So you'll figure out what works best for you as you are going. But the key thing is that we're able to create colors. We can adjust the sizes of our brushes or pens. O on the keyboard is the keyboard shortcut, which allows me to make it bigger or smaller as I go very quickly. Or I can use my settings up here and adjust those, maximum size, adjust my smoothing as I draw. If you go too high on the smoothing, it slows it down and you start to get some really janky, weird stuff. I'll just turn it up so we can see as it's really adjusting. If I hold straight, it's almost giving me straight lines. There isn't a built-in feature like some vector programs do. A circle like that and hold, it will then snap it to a perfect circle, draw a square, triangle, like Procreate can do things like that. Harmony does not. So that would be something to keep in mind with it. So as we create drawings, have fun with it, try out some of the different settings, start to learn how it works. In our next video, we're going to go into working with the timeline and multiple drawings. Good luck and have fun.